So hello everybody again. It's very wonderful to be here tonight on this very balmy Sydney evening. I hope it's balmy in Melbourne. Rob and Anita are in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Is it balmy?
Yes, it's been hot the last 2 days.
That's wonderful. And Claudia is here with us in Melbourne, and we're going to be chatting to Rob Sasha, who is a playwright who has written the play called The Making of Sasha Fine, based on a book by his sister-in-law, Anita. And what was that? Elma Goodman has raised her hand again. Okay, I'm not sure what the problem is. Maybe Dunera can handle that for me. Okay, let's go. So Rob wrote the play. Anita wrote the book on which Rob adapted to a play. I was given this play nearly 2 years ago, and we met in Melbourne and we discussed it, and I was immediately drawn to various issues. I read a lot of plays. Hello, we've got another actor who's just arrived. The story is fascinating, and it's an issue about what a parent would go to save the life of their child, which of course hits very home with me, mother of 3 and grandmother to 6. That was the first thing. The next thing that hit home was, first of all, the dialogue, which flows beautifully, and also the truths. You know, if I read a text and I don't learn something, I'm afraid it just doesn't feel worthy of the time and effort. And there's an enormous amount of time and effort put into producing a play. This particular situation that we are running at the moment was in a result of what happened with COVID. We couldn't get into the theatre, so what we did is we developed a stage called the Second Stage, which is a developmental program. We invited the community to send us work, and within a week we had over 25 submissions. I had this play already in my basket, and it was one of the plays that was top of my list to produce. Our Second Stage is not a full production of a play. It is a play reading of new works. And the purpose for it is so that the playwright and the actors and all the creatives can come together and put all the flesh on an idea and a development. And I think that this is something that's sorely lacking. There usually isn't the time or the finances to do what we're doing now. Usually what happens, a producer will get a play and hopes that a lot of the work will be done in the 3 to 4 weeks rehearsal. So often plays land up on our stages, which are really not ready, says I. I don't know how many people would agree with that, but anyway, that's my opinion. So we're going to open our conversation by talking to Rob and Anita. Anita, hello.
Hello.
So you're an author of 11 published nonfiction books, largely on women and history, and you've just written a new book, I heard, which is about women. Give me that title again. What
it's called I Am Woman, like the Helen Reddy song.
Wow.
And it's about parts of my life that relate to women today and the issues that they face.
Okay.
It's a blend of memoir and social issues.
All right. Well, I've already got it on my list. I'm going to read it. I'm interested in women. I think women are a different species. I don't know what Rob has got to say about this, but I'm quite sure they're a different species. Your book, I Am Sasha, on which this play was based, was shortlisted for the New South Wales Premier's Young People's History Award. Anita is a former lecturer of English and politics and was an executive officer in the Victorian Premier Department in Women's Affairs. Anita, this remarkable story, which is based on a secret that your father kept for over 60 years, is that correct?
Well, it wasn't quite a secret. My grandmother would say to me when I was a child, you know, Dad survived the war as a girl. And that's all she would say. And my father didn't want to talk about it, and my mother didn't talk about it. So it was quite typical, I think, of a lot of Holocaust survivors who preferred to bury the past and not talk about whatever happened. And it was not till some years later that I really learnt what it meant that he lived as a girl and survived as a girl during the war. It was when my grandmother was nearly passing away, and she handed me a manila folder with her notes, which was really a memoir of what she went through with my father during the war and her life before the war and then coming to Australia. And it took me something like 20 years. When she gave it to me, I put it in the drawer. I was raising my children. I was writing books. I was busy. I didn't really look at the memoir at that point. It was some 20 years later that I actually made a cup of tea, took the memoir out of the drawer and read it. And when I read it, I was just blown away with what I had read. And I was very emotional. And I wished that I knew when my family were alive what they actually went through after reading what I had read, because I saw them in a different light. I saw my family in a different light. I understood, I understood about their characters a lot more after reading that.
So that's remarkable. Did you understood more about their characters? Were there issues with your dad? You say he never spoke about it.
He didn't speak about it. What he said to me was, I should have died in the war, and every day I got after the war was just like winning Tats Lotto, because my destiny and my fate was to die in that war.
Wow, that's beautiful. Did you have questions about him as a dad, or did you just accept him as he was? Were there things that became clearer to you after you knew what he'd gone through?
Well, I understood why he was so nervous after reading that he was pretending to be something he was not, and in hiding for, the teen years, the formative years of his life. So I understood why he was so nervous, and it gave me a bigger understanding of him as a person. And I would have shown more empathy while he was alive had I known what I'd known after reading what my grandmother wrote.
Right.
And also I looked at my grandmother very differently too. She was so courageous. She had so much guts and gusto. And, she was a remarkable woman to do the things that she did to get through the war. And her ideas saved my father.
So the people who are listening, and hello everybody, and I can see some hands are being raised and some chat is potentially there for us, which we will definitely get to that before this hour is over. Just to get a little bit of a background, Anita, tell us what she actually did, because at this stage the audience haven't been let in on the basic plot of the play.
Okay, so my father was 9 when the war broke out, Second World War, and they were in Poland. His father had died when he was 2, so my grandmother was a widow raising her son on her own. And by the time he was 13, the Nazis were in full swing and murdering Jews. And my grandmother she had cyanide with them, and she said to my father, I think we should end it now, and we don't, there's no hope, we're not going to survive. And he begged her and he said, Mum, do something. I need you to do something. I want to live. Wow. So she went to see a priest. She went to see the teacher, his school teacher, for some help, because she didn't know what to do. He had a lovely, kind Polish school teacher, and the teacher referred her to see a priest. So she went to see a priest. And when she went to see the priest, he said, she confessed the story of her being Jewish with my father. And he said, look, I only think there's one thing for you to do, my dear, and that's to convert to Catholicism, you and your son.
Mm.
And she left the church and she felt sick. She threw up and she said to herself, I cannot throw away my roots and my soul. I have to find another way. So there was a neighbor. She started thinking there was a Gentile neighbor with a daughter the same age as my father. And she went to see this Gentile neighbor and wanted her papers to so that my father would become that girl and assume a female identity, and she would become that woman. And she bartered her personal items that she had saved during the war and her mother's locket that the woman was eyeing and wanted. So they did a barter system, and that's what she did. And then, but that was just the beginning, because my father then, in Polish, the verbs are gender-based. So he had to learn to walk and talk like a girl. And my grandmother groomed him in that process. And she found he was slightly built like her sister. So she borrowed her sister's dress and she padded her own shoes and she dressed him like a girl. And there's the photo of him as a girl, how he survived, on the cover of I Am Sasha, my book.
That's right. What an amazing, wonderful story. You know, when I listened to Rob, I want to bring you in now. Can I just introduce Rob Selzer, who's an academic psychiatrist and an associate professor at Monash University and at Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. Rob, several years ago, he co-founded the popular talk show Radiotherapy on Radio RRR, where he developed a taste for writing and performance. To his great surprise, he subsequently won several national and international writing awards. There are many plays listed here, but the one that is recent is a new play called The Importance of Being Jewish, which is in pre-production with the Salt Pillar Theatre in Melbourne. Rob, when I listened to Anita, you had some choices to make in order to write the play. I mean, there's some remarkable scenes there. How did you decide which to take and which to not take? I mean, you know, I didn't know about this background. Anita, you've gone very dark. I don't know why.
The light went out in my room. Let me just put it on.
Okay.
She hasn't paid her electricity bill.
It looks like it, yes.
Yeah. Look,
Here we go.
it was a big responsibility because I knew.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah.
I knew Anita's dad. I knew him very well, and he was a beautiful man. He really was. He was a gentle man who was always ready with a joke or to cheer you up. And then, you know, when I heard the story from Anita, and I of course read the book. It was incredibly moving to know this background to how he came through the war. And so when Anita said to me, "Look, could you turn this into a play?" I was actually in the south. I was near Beersheba in Israel, and we were hiking through there. And you know, she texted me or called me, I can't remember. And I started thinking about it, and I was weighted with the responsibility of it. But once that I kind of let go of that, I thought, you know, how can I turn this story into a stage play? Because what is an incredibly gripping story in a book doesn't necessarily translate well to a stage. And so I thought about it and tried to take as many of the themes and of the scenes that Anita had written about in the book and put them in the play. You know, obviously they're condensed or they're concatenated. I added a few other scenes that weren't actually in the book for the drama, and a few staging things to cross time, which you can do on stage, which you can't do in a book. And added a character or two who are kind of narrators in a broader sense. Particularly, there's a rabbi character. I love rabbis, by the way. I just, you know, I'm very close to my rabbi, who's the most incredible guy. And I'm not particularly religious. I'm not particularly religious, but I just love rabbis. And the rabbi in this play I really, really like because he talks about the bigger picture of what we as Jews are responsible for, or what I think, in his eyes, they are responsible for. And I think, one of the big themes of this story, of Anita's story, of her father's story and her grandmother's story, is that we survive. I just met with a stranger who was put onto me today about his mother's Holocaust story. And again, they're all incredible stories. And, the will of the human spirit to survive under impossible circumstances. I mean, Anita's dad had to pretend to be a girl whilst he was an adolescent boy with the language, and at any second, if he slipped up, he would have been identified and killed.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like living like that for years, every single day you wake up? And that story fascinated me, and I guess in the bigger theme of the will that we have to survive was the overarching theme, which I tried to sort of thread through the play.
Thank you, Rob. And again, welcome everybody who's joining us on this webinar. In case you're wondering who the two beautiful people are, not saying that the other two people are not beautiful, but the two beautiful young people in the one corner sitting in one room are actors who are going to be playing the mother that Anita has been speaking about and her son. And so we've got Toby Bloom and we've got Claudia Ware. I'm not going to ask you questions now, you guys. Get ready, because they're going to give us a sneak preview of a scene. Well, I don't know. Maybe this is the time for it to happen, because we are talking not about the big themes yet. We're talking about the actual decision, the way the mother solved this problem without having to take cyanide and appealing to or complying, or that's the wrong word, looking after a son by finding another solution to this dreadful problem. So the scene, I am going to change the format, guys, but I have the power to do that. So I hope you're ready. Are you unmuted? Because you look like you're very silent. Claudia?
Yes, I'm muted now.
Okay, good. So the reason I want to do it now, and then we'll get back and we can ask questions of the actors, and the actors can ask questions of Rob and Anita. The reason I want to do it now is because the scene that you have prepared to show us is where, for the first time, the mother tells the son her plan to get him through the war. Now, Claudia is a WAPA-based actress. I've got everybody's CVs in front of me. God forbid I shouldn't give you your CVs. And she's a 2015 graduate. She's done many plays, particularly with Sport for Jove, a wonderful company. And she's been in productions such as The Tempest, Midsummer Night's Dream, Macbeth, Servant of Two Masters, and Measure for Measure. Wow, that's, well, you've got the basics, Claudia. And last year, Claudia appeared in our production of The God of Isaac, and I'm sure many of our audiences saw that at the Darlinghurst Theatre Company. Young Toby is a younger man who completed the Bachelor of Fine Arts at NIDA in 2017. And he did an interesting production, which is appropriate to what we're talking about here. He spent, how long? A touring production of Hitler's Daughter, directed by Sandra Eldridge. How long did you tour for, Toby?
That one toured like the east coast of Australia for about, I think it was 3-4 months.
Right. Yeah. Okay. He's also one half of the clowning duo Rudy and Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Who have performed extensively in Sydney and at Melbourne South Bank Theatre. Okay, so the part of Toby, the part of the young man who starts off by being called Sasha and then has to change his name to Salah, was pretty hard to audition for obvious reasons. And I think it's going to be a pretty demanding part. Now, I need to remind you that these actors have just had the script. That's all they've received to date. We've not rehearsed it. We've run through the scene probably twice at my house. And we are now going to spend 2 days delving into the characters. And I've got some important questions to ask them after they've done the play. Now, Toby, if you can just get yourself on a level with Claudia, because you're at a different level.
Significantly taller than me.
I can go back. How's that?
That's very strange.
Are you actually standing, the two of you? Are you sitting?
That was it.
Okay, that's better. All right, good. Okay, so Toby, don't go out of camera. You're going out of camera. Okay, there you go. All right, good. Is there any ways you can get a bit closer to the screen?
Sure.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's much better.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, it's all yours.
Put it on.
Mama, this is a joke?
You think this is funny?
I don't understand.
Please put it on.
Why?
Because I need to adjust the length.
Who is it for? Auntie Binka?
It's not for Binka.
I thought you went out to find us papers.
I got us papers.
So we will be safe.
The papers are for Mrs. Marisha and Sala Gruzinski.
Sala.
Sala.
But I am Sasha. Sala is a girl's name.
That is what I asked for.
Oh, I'm so hungry. My head is like, I don't
What do you think happens when the soldiers suspect a boy is Jewish?
I don't know.
They make him drop his pants. If he is circumcised, he is shot.
But I don't look...
Sasha, put it on. It must fit properly.
Fit? For how long?
Long enough.
In November, I'm bar mitzvah. How can I go to the bima in a dress?
Please, Sasha.
Mama, I'd rather be shot than wear a dress.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. It's just a piece of fabric.
Oh, what if Sam and Isaac see me?
You want to stay alive?
Not as a girl, I don't. No, I won't do it.
Samuel and Isaac are dead.
What?
The Klugers and Lembergs were taken.
Taken where?
Yanawaska.
When? Why didn't you tell me?
Everyone we know is gone.
What do you mean, everyone?
You want me to be killed too?
No, of course I
You know what
don't.
they will do to me if I am caught with a Jewish boy? A bullet would be a relief.
But
Put it on. Hurry. You have to learn to speak like a girl. Oh, you've gotten so skinny. We will need to practice female grammar. You are smart. This will work.
before, when you said everyone, Zayda is safe, yes? You told me he was...
I don't know.
Auntie Binka?
We will let your hair grow out. You have beautiful curls.
I don't want long hair. Auntie Binka, is she safe?
She is hiding under the blacksmiths. Your toys, where are they?
Over there.
I must have every last one.
Why?
We have to get rid of them.
Get rid of them? No.
Because this soccer ball is a boys. So are these soldiers and these action books.
No, what will I read? This isn't fair.
Fair. Fair is to stay alive.
No.
It will give us away.
No, you said you used to play chess with Auntie Binka and the girls in your class. Girls, they play chess. You know they do. Zayda gave it to me.
Collect everything. Your clothes too. I'll see what I can get for them at the market.
Wonderful.
Oh, is that it?
Wonderful. Rob.
Wow,
Thank
no,
you.
I had
Don't
tears in my eyes.
Yeah, I feel
was
that too.
magnificent.
I feel very emotional that you've brought alive Rob's words and input, and based on my story, it's just, I feel very emotional.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful, guys. Wonderful.
I do think it was good. Well done, guys. I've got some questions. How do I handle them? Oh, I've got, that was so amazing, amazing, great readings, brilliant, well done, great, brilliant, great entree. Congratulations, that was Fabulous. Okay, well, that's a good start.
Um,
Okay, so I've got some questions for the youngsters, but I'm not going to ask them now. I'm going to ask that later, because I want people to understand that besides the plot and the story, there is a big theme. There are a couple of big themes, Rob, that you have incorporated into this play. And you've used some amazing metaphors. The one that gets me going is the one about the glasses. No, I suppose we need to explain why you brought in a granddaughter and the intergenerational relationships in the play.
Sure, I'm still recovering from that scene. That really, I feel like I had tears in my eyes. So thank you. That was just fantastic.
And that's after 2 readings. We usually spend a month rehearsing.
Yeah, that was just fantastic. So the relationship between the grandfather and the granddaughter, I'm moved by the intergenerational relationships. I observe the relationship between my kids, who are teenagers, and their grandparents, and it's beautiful. It's so pure. You know, grandparents often have the time and the space to just be with kids, and there's no rushing around and here and there. They're just with them, and they're often not responsible for the disciplining or the chores or those sorts of things. So there is this this natural, special kind of bond that forms. So I took that as a template and thought, well, wouldn't it be great if the granddaughter and the grandfather had that relationship? And the grandfather in this play, Sandy, hasn't talked about, you know, as a difference to the true story, he's never talked about his wartime experience, but it is in him. It is in him. And it eats away.
What do you mean by that, Rob? What do you mean by the...
Well, you know, there's a part of him that he reacts against. So Sandy, as an adult in Australia, is seen as very even-keeled, doesn't express too much of a negative or positive emotion, always very, very centered, because as a child, he wasn't allowed to do that, because if he got angry, if he stood out, if he yelled or cried or laughed too hard, he would have been singled out and noticed. And that's the worst thing that you can possibly be when you're hiding out. So that is how he sort of managed the rest of his life. But there was a part of him that didn't want to be that, obviously. And that part of him, which was unexpressible, metastasized, got put into his son. And his son just didn't understand why his son, is a very angry man, or, and he can't understand why he's so angry. And that it's because Sandy has displaced that unknowingly and unwittingly and unconsciously, obviously, into his son. His son had become a very successful man. But there's this part of him, he's very tough on the football field and he's a very tough businessman. But this thing that happened to Sandy was unspoken about. And the son is always saying, why won't you speak about it? Why won't you speak about it? And yet with the granddaughter, he can talk about things. He can talk about emotional things. He doesn't, I won't ruin the play and spoil it for you, but he can just talk about his feelings and what it feels like to feel odd or out of place or constantly scrutinized by others, because the granddaughter is kind of an odd kid. She's this math whiz and she's a little bit geeky and nerdy, and the other girls kind of pick on her a bit. And so she kind of feels sort of angst-ridden, like Sandy did as a kid, as Sulla. And so he says to her, you and I are the same. And there's a scene where he gets a wine glass and rubs the edge of the wine glass and it starts singing. Wine glasses sing. Mm-hmm. And then he puts another wine glass next to it, and that wine glass resonates at the same frequency as this glass. It starts singing as well. And he says, that's like us, because you and I resonate at the same, we react to the same things. We're like two singing wine glasses. And he says, in life, you will find other people like this, but at the moment, it's you and me. So yeah, that's the wine glass analogy.
So that is a big theme, that the granddaughter has a problem. She's a teenager and she's very different to, and we all know that that's a fraught time of anybody's life, but she is particularly different because she's highly intelligent and she's very interested in maths. Tell us about that. Tell us about that, that metaphor, the Mandalbrot theory.
Yeah, so the Mandalbrot set, Mandalbrot to me always meant almond bread. Is that right, Annie, in Yiddish?
Yeah,
Mandalbrot is
Mandalbrot, pronounced
Mandalbrot.
Yeah.
Mandalbrot. It also happens to be the name of this famous mathematician who devised this fractal geometry set. You may have seen it. And it's this particular pattern. It's like a Paisley pattern, the equation. And it's a computer picture. And the thing is, the more you magnify that picture, the closer in you get to it. The image changes, but it kind of looks the same. It's different, but the same. And you can magnify it and magnify it and magnify it till infinity. And it'll keep looking different, but it'll always look kind of the same. And that's the Mandalbrot set. And so she's fascinated by this. And well, so was I, to be honest. And it's a metaphor for that things will change, but they're always the same. That history doesn't so much repeat, it rhymes. I think Mark Twain said that, or somebody else. So history will keep recurring. It won't look exactly the same, but it will look similar. And it's the same with us, and it's the same with everything. And so that became one of the key themes in the play. And you know, she's constantly trying to show her grandfather these amazing scientific and mathematical things, and he's kind of asking, "What does it mean? What does it mean?" Yeah, so that's another thing.
It's a lovely theme that it's the broad idea is that the past infects or infuses the future, and you cannot be present until you come to terms with your past. Is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say infects, because that would always mean that it's negative. But I think, you know, I can't remember who said this, but it's kind of like, it was Spinoza, that's right. I can sound very intellectual and quote Spinoza. I haven't read any of it, but I read a blurb of Spinoza. Basically that, you know, we often can't change much. I mean, we can change some things, obviously, but we can learn about it, and that way we can react to it differently. So a farmer will know that the climate changes. Now he or she can't change the climate, but they know how to respond to it. They know how to deal with it. And I think with history, that's one of the things. As individuals, we will know how to deal with it better, particularly given, you know, recent events. We know how history, how it can go. And so that was one of the themes. And I'm not sure if you want to talk about now or later, but the idea of a he, she, amda is one of those themes too. Right.
Before we go on, I just want to share with you some of the chat from our attendees. Particularly, let me just take them in order. Somebody said, where do we see this play? Well, we'll talk about that. You just go to Moira Blumenthal Productions and it'll give you a lead into where we're going to be doing it. And remember, it's a play reading, it's not a full play, so we'll be going through the whole play, but there will be no costumes and no props, and it actually makes it pretty raw and pretty exciting, believe it or not, sometimes better than the full production. So somebody said here, I always wonder about using accents. Is it a necessity? No, it's not a necessity, and I usually avoid them. I avoid them as far as I possibly can, because what happens is we never get them right, or they differ within the same cast. So you'll get a whole family speaking with an American accent, and they usually are not quite the same. This is happening on film as well. To assume an accent is very difficult, and it takes a long time. There are very few people who've got the ear. Meryl Streep is one of them. But in this particular play, we decided we were going to use a light Polish or Middle European, Eastern European accent, just to differentiate between the family and the Australian family. And I think the guys did very well with it. So in this occasion, we actually are going to, because of the structure of how we're doing this play without any costumes or props or even lights, we need the audience to follow who's who. So in this case, we are going to use accents. I've got a note for you, Anita. An anonymous attendee has said, your father was my boss at Montefiore Home. Approximately 55 years ago. He was a fabulous person, always smiling and joking. Good memories. Isn't that amazing?
Lovely, amazing, amazing.
Yeah. So, and the next question is, how many in the cast? Well, there's six people in the cast. Okay, I just want to get back to our guests from Melbourne. Anita, I don't know, write a book and then somebody adapt it into a play, and on top of it, his close family. How did you negotiate the emotional pitfalls? Did you ever have upsets? What was the process?
It was very seamless between us. First of all, we're very close. Secondly, I said to Rob, I would like two things from you. One is to keep as close to the actual book as you can in terms of the play, and to include Sasha's name in the titles, to link it up with Sasha in the title of my book. And the rest I left to him because I trusted him, completely trusted him. And it shows in the product that he's delivered.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I hope you trust us, because we're now taking it one step further.
Well, after seeing that reading, I'm so sorry that I'm not there, and I think Rob shares that sentiment, because we would love to be there to see this performed or read, the reading of it. The
We
guys
would love to have you.
both of them. Wonderful. Again, I have to say, wonderful.
Now, I want to ask Claudia something, and then I want to ask Toby something, because I'm very aware of the time. Claudia, you look, we haven't studied the play, and I guess, no, we've read it. We've only got 2 days. You have got to handle a part where the woman has a bit of a trajectory. She starts off, there's one short scene, and all the scenes that are played in your area, we're dividing the area into 2 stages. We've got platforms. We've got one platform, which is the Australian family, and then we go back into the past, which is on the other platform. Now, that's all that you have got. You've got a platform, you've got a light which doesn't change, you've got no costumes, your hair and your clothes don't become disheveled and old. How are you? Yes, I know, I love your haircut. How are you going to achieve this degradation of this woman?
Oh, that's $1 million question. Look, I think that the temptation with a character that's under as much duress as she is throughout the entirety of this play is to present her in a wash of emotion. But what's so remarkable about her is that she's a high stakes problem solver. And in every scene, she's problem solving with a child, essentially. And now I'm not a mother. I don't have children of my own, but I do have small nephews. And when you're trying to get children to do anything, you're strategizing at every turn. So I think that's where the trajectory of her is going to come. It's not so much through the emotion. The emotion is going to come as a byproduct of her intense problem solving and dealing with not only a young person, but a young person who she loves deeply, and in a situation that is so fraught with trauma and the likelihood of death. I think all those things are gonna help to create some sort of shape with this character.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Anita, tell me, the woman that you knew, in retrospect, you've heard Claudia's sort of description of the character as Rob has written it. how did she translate into an Australian environment? I mean, you know, I know that I'm asking a very difficult question to answer, but coming out of that trauma and then bringing up children in this peaceful, somewhat bland environment, did that strength still show?
My grandmother was a formidable woman. She supported herself throughout her life. She wouldn't take help from my parents. She learned to paint. She loved to paint, and she did bark pictures. And she was fully abreast of politics of the world. She was a wonderful cook. And best of all, she was my loving Nana.
Wow, that's wonderful. Sorry, I'm making you cry.
No,
I
it's
don't
okay.
need to make you cry.
It's okay.
All right. So we've got a couple of other notes here. There's a note about the play is being presented on Saturday, but that you can pick up yourselves. Can it be recorded and viewed online? Well, part of this program was that we were recording the plays that we're doing, but because this one actually, mainly because of the trajectory that it goes from the present to the past, and we have very limited time, it's going to be too difficult to put it onto a podcast. So we're not recording this one, unfortunately. There's another note that says, Moira, I'll be out of town for the showing. Is there any way that I can obtain a recording? I'm blown away. We'll get the script to you, Arthur, if that's okay with Rob. Sorry to miss out the rest of the talk. Goodness's wonderful story and delivery. Okay, it would be useful for, okay. Anyway, that's great. So now, just how we for time. So what I want to do now is ask Toby a question, and then I'm going to swing it to Rob. Toby, you've got quite a journey ahead of you. You're a young man, and you're going to be playing. You're going to start off as a boy, a normal boy who loves soccer and loves balls and loves playing outside. And then within a couple of scenes, you have going to have to transform into a young girl. There's no costumes. You can't put on a skirt. We can't even give you a wig. You can do nothing. What are you going to do to make this work for our audiences? Because you're going to have to make it work, otherwise the play won't work, says your director.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it is all in the performance and all in finding some way and some sort of understanding of the way that you would present as a girl in that time period. And I think that goes down to speech, that goes down to movement, that goes down to the certain interests that he would have been sort of instructed to have. Also the way that he uses language, as Rob said. So I think it's about making all those decisions and making them really clear and really strong, so that it reads in this sort of play reading setting. Because you don't, as you say, Moira, you don't have the benefits of all that costuming and of all of the makeup. So it is something that has to come down to movement, to movement of every sort of part of, well, yeah, in every sort of way.
So give us an example. Audiences are fascinated by this. How would, I mean, you're a trained actor. Okay,
Yeah.
how is your movement going to change? It's coming from the spine, that I know.
Yeah, no, totally.
And it's coming from the walk, that I know, and it's coming from how you hold your head.
Yeah, no, there are so many different ways of getting into it, and there are so many different sort of methods that we're taught to get into it. One of them is this idea of archetypes, and I think there are 7 different archetypes, and all of the archetypes are, a good way to get into them is to decide which part of your body you lead from. So for instance, there's one called the angel, and the idea of the angel is it's someone that has angel wings coming out of their back. And so if you sort of have that image in your head and then you walk through a space or you speak, then that sort of invariably changes the way you come across, and you sort of take on this sort of angel archetype that is shared across cultures, across generations. So I find that's a really useful way to get into it. So you could say, okay, well, maybe the Sasha character leads more with his feet because he's a boy, a bit more of a warrior. But then when he's sort of instructed to become Sala, to become the girl, he then takes on a sort of higher, more sort of angelic posture, and then all of the other sort of vocal choices and movement choices that come attached to that.
Okay. All right. So while I'm with the two of you, there's just a question from one of our audiences. What happened to Anita? The light keeps on going. Anita, you'll never work with me. You've got to stay in the light.
Light's back.
Thank you. Somebody, Debbie Warnock, who's one of our really very strong supporters, says to me to ask Toby and Claudia, what do you know about the Holocaust? Do you know about the Holocaust?
Yes, I'd like to think that I have a reasonable understanding of the Holocaust. It's certainly something that we were taught at school. And then, I'm a voracious reader, so I think I've read a lot of Holocaust literature and watched a lot of the films that have been produced about that time. But I think also, luckily for me, I worked with Moira last year and had so many interesting people around from the Jewish community to hear stories from and ask questions to. And yes, we have been to the museum. I actually went to the museum with Moira last year, and we heard from a wonderful
Holocaust survivor,
who came to our show. So that was an incredibly enriching aspect of that production, and really gave me a different angle into some stories around the Holocaust. Toby?
Yeah, I'm probably similar to Claudia. I did a show last year, as Moira mentioned, called Hitler's Daughter, which was with Monkey Bar. And Hitler's Daughter was this show that was based on a Jackie French book for young people about a hypothetical daughter that Hitler has or had, or just this idea of what would happen if Hitler had a daughter. And then the sort of story that would sort of follow from that, which was essentially this play that we toured around to a lot of people between the age of like 10 and like 13, 14, essentially to teach them or give them some introduction to the Holocaust and an idea of sort of evil and what compels people and compels a society to commit genocide and to let those things happen the way they did in that time. So because of that experience, I feel like I've got a pretty good understanding of what happened.
Just as well, because we haven't got time to teach you in 2 days. Rob, we had conversation before we started the webinar, which quite excited me, and I got a bit frustrated that you're stuck in Melbourne. You should be sitting with us in the rehearsal room. This process, I was saying to you, putting a playwright together with actors before the play gets onto the stage, right at the beginning, is such a fruitful process. Anyway, it's not going to happen this time. But you were talking to me about a phrase that I questioned, and you were talking to me about how it infuses the whole play. Can you go through that again?
Yeah, I'm not giving anything away.
No,
because
it's okay.
It's at the very start of the play, and there's the rabbi character, and he's eulogizing Sandy's mum. So, and he talks about her life and so forth, and then he starts talking about what it is that's important in our lives, and how Sandy's mum was she was working for the Polish underground, and she was making papers. I mean, she was making papers. She was forging identity cards for Jews so that they could survive. And so the rabbi then starts talking about identity. What is identity? What is it about being us? What is it about being Jewish? And that gets into talking about Vahi She'amda, which, if for those that you don't know, who don't know, it's a song in the Seder, in the Passover meal that we have. And my family get pretty frustrated with me every Passover because I make a strong point of singing this song. And Vahi She'amda, Lavotanu V'lanu, is basically every generation they come for us. Every generation they try and destroy us. And yet we survive. And yet we survive. What does that mean? What does that say? You know, it's, I have to think about this. What does this mean? What is, you know, we survive? What are we surviving? What makes us survive? What do we do that we survive? And I think personally, one of the reasons, one of the things that we do as Jews is that we're a mirror, and that we hold up to society and we reflect back to society a lot of what the values are. And that, yeah, we may be broken for a period of time, but then when a mirror breaks, it shatters into 1,000 little pieces, which each reflect even more from different angles what's happening in society. And, you know, during the Holocaust, one of the reflections was the unspeakable horror of what happened, but it also reflected the righteous Jews, the people that risked their own lives to save their neighbors. Can you imagine, you know, what they were under? And so we reflect, what happens to us reflects the absolute worst that society can do and the absolute best that society can do. So that idea of this repetition, you know, that comes into it as well. Every generation that comes into it. So yeah.
Rob, well, what we're trying to do, and we are going to achieve it, is get you onto Zoom. So you'll be able to give and infuse the cast with some of this information and some of your intent, you know, the intention behind these speeches. So we are scheduling you to be in the rehearsal room at 10:30 tomorrow, and then maybe again at 3. So you'll have a chance to tell us that again. I've just got a couple of notes for you guys from Roz Jason to all panelists, and particularly to gorgeous Anita. Love to you.
Can I say something? Roz Jason was my daughter's kindergarten teacher.
Oh my goodness, how beautiful. How beautiful. And then there was another one which has disappeared, so I can't see it. So I wanted to ask you both, because to me, if I do a production and people go away talking about it, arguing about it, like we had at the last play, which was a play by Brian Fine, and we had a little bit of an uproar in the audience after the Saturday night, I actually feel like I've achieved my purpose. Rob, what would you like people to take away from this?
You see, I don't want to tell you because I want them to take it away without me telling them what to take away. So I knew you were going to ask me this question. I'm not going to answer it, Moira. But I think there are lots of themes to take away. And, you know, when one writes a play, I mean, I'm used to writing comedy. So this was a departure for me, and a very welcome departure, I've got to say. But, you know, when you write a play, you don't just do it for the lines, and you just don't do it for the drama. You do it because there are overarching themes that you want to connect with an audience. You want the audience to think about something. You're not necessarily giving them the answers, but you want them to actually walk out and talk about it, and maybe have differing opinions about what it means. So without revealing what they are, they're there, but they're fairly powerful themes.
Good.
You have to come watch it.
Anita, well, is there anything you'd particularly like the audience to take away?
Yeah, I think the importance of sharing stories with loved ones while you're all alive.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a good
really
one.
Powerful.
I love that. I love that, because really that's my life purpose, is to share stories. There's something here which says, oh, they've complimented me, which is nice. There's somebody else who says, will the play become a movie? Would be great to see it on the big screen. I think it has that potential. And then there's There's an interesting one again, Moira. Are you going to have any music playing during the play? Well, I probably am. I know that I'm going to have a bit of a battle with some of my actors who wants to keep it as a pure play reading, but I think that the link between the present and the past, particularly those past scenes in the other platform, would be much easier to understand if it was underscored with music. So I've got some Schumann, I've got some Debussy, I've got some classics, and I'm going to probably use some music. Oh, there's a lovely note here from Vida Gegeglas, can't pronounce your surname, who says, I understand what Anita just said. My dad died without telling his story of being prisoner of war. Wow, that's amazing. All right, guys, I think we're spot on 8 o'clock, so we've had a wonderful time together. So for those who want to watch the play reading, we're going to be at the Ara Theatre on Saturday at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And you can book seats. The easiest thing for you to do is just go, you remember my name, Moira Blumenthal Productions.com.au. And thank you everyone for your time and for your attention and being so involved with our wonderful new story. And congratulations to Rob and congratulations to Anita. May you have lots of joy and a big journey with this one. And see you two young ones tomorrow morning at 9:45.
Thank you, Moira.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.